Hello, my name is Chiara Giorgi, and I'm the Global Brand and Event Director for Seatrade Cruise. And I'm joined here today by Shannon McKee, one of our ambassadors for Ports and Destinations. Welcome, Shannon.
Hey, Chiara, how are you? Always good to see you.
Same, just at a distance, but look forward to seeing you in person.
Hopefully very soon we'll see each other in person after way too long.
I know, way too long. So Shannon, we want to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you start at the beginning? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Texas. I'm a Texas girl. For those of you that don't know me, maybe you can catch a little twang here and there when I speak, or especially if I'm around my family, it all comes out again. But I grew up in Texas. We are transplants. My family came actually from a small town, Michigan City, Indiana, and moved down to Texas. My dad was in the Army, so I'm an Army brat, and grew up there. Started in Austin, Texas, and then moved to Arlington when my dad took a position with Arthur Anderson. And so that's really where I spent most of my time, is in that Arlington and Fort Worth area. So that's where I'm from.
So how did you go from Texas, middle of land, out onto the sea?
You know, it's funny because I was thinking about that, and what I realized is that, you know, I grew up in a very modest family. I mean, our vacations were spent doing road trips to see the world's largest yarn piece, or, you know, up to see family in Indiana. I didn't see the ocean until I was 16 for the very first time. But I think that when I saw it, I became enchanted. And this was down in the Gulf. We went to Port Aransas in Texas, and that's where we started. And then I didn't leave the country until I was 18. So I went on a trip when I was 18 with my Girl Scout troop. I was a Girl Scout all the way through high school, and we traveled for 6 weeks throughout 6 different countries in Europe, and I was hooked. I fell in love. But the cruise industry really didn't, I never really considered the cruise industry. I had never been on a cruise before until one of my college girlfriends that I worked with said, you know, when I'm done with school, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do a fun job. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do a fun job. And so she said, well, I worked on a cruise ship once. And I said, okay, well, that sounds fun. So, you know, she's like, we should work in the gift shop, because in the gift shop, you're off when you're in port. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like the best job ever. So we applied and we got a job, and I started with Norwegian Cruise Line in January of 1993. And, you know, after all of that, you know, it was said and done. I had told my dad I was going for a summer, you know, maybe a semester, and then I would go back and get my master's degree, but I was hooked. So that was all she wrote, and it's been my career ever since.
I didn't realize that you started in the gift shop, though.
I did. And you know what? At first, they didn't want me. They said, well, you don't have any retail experience. I had been a lifeguard. I had worked, you know, for my father in his accounting office, which I knew I didn't want to do that. So I had to go with one of my mom's friends who owned a shop and went and apprenticed so I could get a little bit of experience so that they would take me so I could work in the gift shop. But yes, that's where I started. And I did 6 months, and I loved being at sea. I did not like working in retail. That was not my thing. And so I moved over and became a social hostess, and then played the corporate ladder game from there. Yeah.
So then when and what made you leave the ship and go ashore?
So I did that for about 8 years. I became a social hostess, and then an assistant cruise director and a cruise director. And I traveled everywhere, really, that Norwegian had to offer. I was on the first ships when they first started doing Europe in 1996, started doing the Baltic capitals. We did the Norwegian fjords, some amazing itineraries, loved it. And eventually they weren't going anywhere new, and I became unsettled. I like to move. I love to change. I love to grow. And so when I was about to turn 30, and I decided, you know what, I'm done with this life. It's been a really fun, it's a work hard, play hard environment, but I'm done. So they offered me a position to come and work in the office. I let my boss know that I was leaving, and he said, okay. And within a week, I got a call saying, hey, would you like to come work in sales? And I said, absolutely. So I made the jump, and I left the ships, and I went back to Texas, packed up my bags, and I moved to Miami. And I joined the sales team as they had a presentation specialist. And it was a really exciting time for Norwegian, because it was right when Star Cruises had purchased Norwegian. And it was that giant transformation that was happening around freestyle cruising. So my job was to travel the entire country, speaking with travel agents at big, halls where we would have hundreds of travel agents talking to them about freestyle cruising. So it was a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to work with some really great people and see the United States. I mean, I tell my kids this all the time. I have two, by the way. I have a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old little girl, but I have been to 48 of the 50 states in the US. The only two states I have not been to is North Dakota, South Dakota. And that's partly due to Norwegian Cruise Line and sending me all over the country promoting freestyle cruising, which at the time was quite the shakeup. There was a lot of pushback around freestyle cruising. People did not like the idea. And now it's like the norm, right?
Absolutely. They were the pioneers for it.
They were the pioneers. And so I was really a part of that pioneer. So I moved into the office, which was fun, and I did that for a year. But as you can imagine, that's burnout. When you're on the road every single week, Monday to Friday, you come home on the weekends, new place every week. We would go to 3 cities a week. It was pretty exhausting. So after that, I was ready to make a move again. And Colin Murphy had started up some programs called land cruise programs around the Star Cruises. And so we were putting together programs around Asia. And so he hired me onto his team, and I started developing cruise programs with him and went to Asia and kept exploring the world, which was awesome. And we got everything ready to launch, and 9/11 happened. Yeah. So, I mean, you can imagine things just crumbled apart, and everything came to a screeching halt. So I got moved into operations. And so I was then working with the airports and the ports, embarkation and debarkation. And so we were doing that after 9/11. We were traveling, making sure everything was set up, working with the security team, Matt Lewis, traveling all over the place. So it was a really tough time. But I have to say, I learned so much during that year. And then they moved me again. My whole career at Norwegian was every year to 2 years moving. They moved me into product development, which I have to say is the best job. Anybody that works in product development as a product development manager, developing tours, I mean, to me, that is the best job ever. That was the most fun, putting programs together for what passengers are going to do on their vacation. Oh my God, it's divine. So I did that, and then I took a role as the director of product development, and then took on onboard revenue, and then took the vice president's role of both onboard revenue and shore excursions at Norwegian. So it was a fun time. There was lots of moves, lots of changes, lots of ups and downs. 2001, the depression, the recession of 2008. I mean, the cruise industry has gone through a lot. Yeah. And if you worked in the cruise industry, you were a part of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've seen a lot over time. That's the thing, not just from working on board and ashore, but all the different jobs that you did over that time. So then,
I remember when I started at Norwegian, some weeks I didn't know anything. I had just started, and people were like, "Oh, they don't know if the company's going to make it." I mean, I don't know if that was true or not, but that was like in the very, early 90s. Maybe it was. I mean, it was a very tumultuous time at Norwegian back then. So. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think we all remember those moments if we were in the workforce then. So, yes. So then what led you to starting Access Cruise?
As I said, I love I love change, but I had gotten to a point at Norwegian, and we were there, and management shifted again. We were purchased by Apollo. There were lots of changes coming again. I had gotten to this role, but I had also just had two babies. So I had a 2-year-old at home and a 3-month-old at home, and we had new senior leadership come in, and my vision didn't match their vision. So they wanted to shift me out of my role and have me do something else. And they weren't quite sure what they wanted me to do. It was very vague. And so, I took the option of, maybe this is my time to exit graciously versus sticking around and holding on to something that maybe I just don't fit in anymore. And so I did. It was a very painful experience, but it's a part of corporate life. It's a part of that, evolution. So, I bowed out graciously, and, Ross Henderson came in and took my role, who I love. Ross, he's amazing. I mean, he's done an amazing job at Norwegian Cruise Line. And I left, and I really took some time to soul search and spend some time with my little ones, because I was one of those, I can be an overachiever where, I was back at work 2 weeks after I had my children. Both of them,
Wow.
at least a few hours a day, because I needed somebody to hold down the fort, I felt. And so I took that time to really regroup myself and really focus on the family, and then started building again. And what I built was Access Cruise. I had people coming to me asking me if I could help them, and it really started out with more on the ShoreX side, some technology partners. But then I got into Banana Coast. I was asked by Randy Jorgensen, who I adore, to come and help him build something down in Banana Coast. And I saw the potential. And so I partnered with him down there, and we built the port for Banana Coast. And I own 50% of the tour company, and we built 24 tours for when we launched. So it was something that was very exciting and something on my terms. And so once I got into the port and destination side of the business, I fell in love again. I felt like it was that first enchantment when I saw the ocean when I was 16, and I just knew I needed to be a part of the ocean. It went back to that the destinations was really my calling on, how do we help grow these destinations and build these destinations? So again, I found my calling. And then from there, we started to work with Hawaii and with Haifa Port in Israel, and Rijeka in Croatia, in Montreal. And so we really started working with those destinations. And of course, sometimes it's easy, but not the ports we work with. There's always a challenge. And so that's what makes it fun, right? It's about how do we overcome those challenges, because that's what you do in the cruise industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what you've just said now also reminds me that earlier, the job that you enjoyed the most at ashore was the product development one, right? So that links back to what you're now sort of
it's all about bringing the joy to the guests and that experience, right? Seeing their faces when they come off and they're seeing something new and exciting. I love that.
So if you think back to when you were a crew member, right, and you were stopping in all these ports and all these destinations, and where we're at now, what have you seen evolve or change? Or
I think back about when we started, and when I started in the early 90s, there weren't that many ports, right? If you think about it, we did Cozumel. We actually did Cancun back then. We would anchor. It was like a 45-minute tender ride into Cancun. And Grand Cayman, but we didn't do a whole lot of ports. It was same old, same old. A lot of my summers were spent doing Bermuda, which is still a premier destination. Of course, Alaska was just starting for Norwegian Cruise Line. I did Alaska. But what I feel has really, the change has been, is that destinations today are more purposeful about having the ships come. I believe that when I was there in the 90s, it was more of a happy accident that a ship would show up, right? That the itinerary planners would find a port that it could accommodate them, And somehow or another, we would find a way to make it fit, and we would show up and people would be like, oh my God, what's that thing here? What do we do with it? And we've moved from that, where the destinations are purposeful about bringing the ships in and knowing what they want, and really what they want to convey to those passengers. It's no longer that happy accident that a cruise ship shows up in your port, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's very planned out for sure.
Yeah.
So now, following the last 16 months,
Oh my goodness,
what do you see the future of these ports and destinations being?
I think that the last 16 months have obviously been difficult for everyone. I feel like all of us have been on this hamster wheel of developing and redeveloping, but never really seeing the fruits of our labor, which has been very difficult. But at the same time, I think it's allowed all the ports and destinations to kind of sit back and say, what do we really want? And who are we really? Because if you think about it, the cruise lines were growing so big and the ships are coming so fast and the capacity was growing so rapidly that I think that some of the destinations had gotten themselves into a predicament of like, oh my goodness, how do we handle this? And so what I see happening now, at least with some of our destinations that we're working with, is that we can be more strategic on what we actually want and what that message is that we want to share. It's no longer, oh my God, because before it was just more, right? For years, that's been tourism. And before the pandemic, we had started having that conversation about sustainable tourism and stewardship, but it was hard to kind of stop, right? We had all this backlash going on. But when everything came to a screeching halt, I think what it's allowed everyone to do is to go back and say, okay, now as we open up, slowly open up, we can be more strategic about what it is that we really want in our destination. For example, in Hawaii, Hawaii's message today is Malama Hawaii, which is about giving back. It's about taking care of your home and your family. And so as what they want is when the visitors come in, it's about giving, we give to you as a destination, we're giving you our aloha, and we want in return for you to share with us too. So it's about that giving and receiving element. And that's the new messaging coming out. And it's an important messaging. And I think all the destinations, I've seen the shift around what the future is going to be. Bigger is not better. More is not necessarily better. It's about, laying it out so it's strategic and we bring the best kind of experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think going back to something you said before, that it's evolved where the itinerary planning is even, the planning part is really important. And
Yeah.
I would expect that that's going to become even more so in the future.
I think so. And I think
hope.
that before there may have been sometimes a disconnect between the ports and the destination management, tourism offices, and there needs to be a better connection there, so that everybody's on the same strategic plan.
Absolutely. So then I do know that you have another business that you haven't spoken about yet. So how did Xelia come about?
Xelia, I think so if I look back, Access Cruise was a bit of a happy accident, right? Where people started coming to me. I'd actually looked at getting out of cruise, but it sucked me right back in, right? I mean, how do you
it always does.
This is, this industry is so sexy and fun. How do you get out, right? So it sucked me back in. And then Banana Coast, again, it was this opportunity and I got involved. But Xelia was really planned. What happened is after having multiple conversations with different itinerary planners, and they talked about the frustrations that they were having with destinations in trying to gather information, especially those itinerary planners that plan for around the world. It's not your 7-day itinerary that you do over and over and over again. Okay, you know exactly what you can do on that 7-day itinerary to St. Thomas, St. Martin, Nassau, and come home. These are the ones, the Silver Seas, the Seabourns of the world that are really looking for these bespoke destinations that the port collectors and their clients want to go to. So they would spend hours upon hours on the internet trying to find information that wasn't necessarily correct. And so I said, you know what, I could build something around that if that's really of interest, and try to bring all the ports and destinations online. And they said, oh my God, that would be brilliant. And so we went and we pitched to the itinerary planners lunch in 2018. Everybody said, if you build it, we'll use it. And so we built it. Now, it's not been all, roses the entire time. It's definitely been challenging in the fact that we had the shutdown. We were really starting to sign a lot of contracts. We were bringing ports online. We have about 400 ports online already. But, every port has their own website. And so they say, well, we have a website. Well, that's true, but there's 3,000 ports in this world that have their own websites, and trying to find it and make sure and find the contact, the legwork that it takes to do that, and the hours. I always say, time is our most precious commodity. Absolutely. All of us have exactly the same amount of time, right? It's how we choose to use that time that is so important. So my message to everyone and to the ports has been, look, how can you better utilize your time? Put your information on Xelia. We have the cruise industry now use it. We have contracts with 8 different cruise lines already. We are starting to sign up the travel agent community. We just signed a really big deal with the travel community for 400 agents to come online for the platform. And we're going to continue to expand that, because they find it so easy to gather their information. So if your information's there, you put it in once. Yes, you go back and check it. If you have updates, you update it, but it's not something that, now you have to answer one-off emails, because that's time. And that time can be utilized to building better relationships, personalized relationships, creating big deals and, port agreements. That's what we're looking at, right? And that's what I hope that Xelia can do for these ports, is really give them this access so it gives them time back.
Absolutely. And it goes hand in hand with what you were saying about planning, right? And right now, any changes that they're making for the future, right? And who they want to, what each destination wants to define themselves as, it's probably a good way to share that message. So
absolutely. And we're going through, we built this and we designed it, but we've hired a user experience expert to work with us to reduce any friction that might be in the system. We think that we have a really great product, but I want it to be a fantastic product. So we continue to evolve, especially through COVID, as we are trying to transform ourselves and continue to elevate the value that we bring both to the cruise lines, the travel agents, and to all of our ports and destinations, because we think that's most important, is that value we can bring you and that time we can give back to you.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you because, you've been a partner of Seatrade Cruise for a few years now.
We have, and it's been a joy and a pleasure working with Seatrade for years now. I still remember meeting you for the first time,
Tenerife.
At Tenerife. I remember that. You and Robin and Shay, it was wonderful.
It was such a great meeting of the minds at the end of Seatrade Cruise Med. But yes, and so I'm really excited that you are now officially an ambassador for us and can help us shape. Thank you for
asking me. We are very grateful and blessed that you asked. We are so thrilled to be a part of this.
No, well, we're happy you can help us shape the content. So, we make sure that we're bringing, the most relevant sessions to all of our events. And, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. So I guess looking now, we're planning on all being together again in September at Seatrade Cruise Global, which is a long time coming. If you actually think about it, the last Seatrade Cruise Global was in 2019. So it's been over 2 years since we've managed to bring the entire global cruise community together. So we are very, very excited to, finally bring everyone back together in September. And I know that you're working on a few things for Seatrade.
We are working on some of the content. I'm really excited with some of my fellow ambassadors, Roger and Giannis. We are putting some programs together, and we're really working on trying to bring something that's thought-provoking and valuable, and some of the lessons learned that from this time. Obviously, it's been a roller coaster for us, but imagine I still remember being in London with you at the Xelia conference, and you're like, Seatrade is happening in April, and then I got back from that trip, and within days, everything got shut down, right? Yeah. I mean, we have been on this roller coaster. So coming back together is so exciting. And, and of course we've seen each other on Zoom, but it's just not the same as when you can see someone in person and that dynamics. So having everybody together in a room together is going to be so exciting. I think the energy is going to be explosive. I think there are going to be so many lessons learned and shared while we're there. I think there's going to be some really dynamic content that's going to come out of this. And again, I know not everybody will be able to be there here in the September, but I also know that you've planned for that too, that the way you're doing Seatrade this year, you're really evolving the way you're putting your messaging out.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, right? We've learned a lot over the last 16 months, yeah. And we've learned, one, that this is an amazing community that we're a part of, because true. As you said, this industry has gone through many difficult periods, but it always bounces back stronger. And I think that's a testament to how close this community is and how everybody comes together and really tries to help each other out. And so it's been interesting the past, 16 months, finding virtual ways to bring the community together. And as you said, there's such an energy on site when we have our live events, but we've managed to recreate a little bit of that energy even in a virtual setting, which has been nice to see. So for this year's event, we know that there are travel restrictions in place, and or there might just be some people who aren't able to travel to the event. And so there will be a way to take part virtually. And we will be bringing the two, as I call them, universes. So the in-person attendees and exhibitors and the virtual attendees and exhibitors. We will be bringing them together in October so that the entire global cruise community can interact with one another online. So yeah, it is. It's a continuous evolution, right, of what we're offering.
Makes your job a little harder, but it keeps it exciting.
As you said, you enjoy change, right? So I think we're all in. I've learned that in this industry, we're not. Most people in the cruise industry and most people in the events industry do embrace change. Yes, and can find joy in that. And I think it's just. I've always said that there's something about the cruise industry where I think because most people on a daily basis are constantly thinking about how to make people smile and how to bring joy to people's lives, you can't help but be joyful and happy yourself.
It's true. One of the things I learned while we were going through this, and we did a series, Giannis and I did a series of sessions, Destination 101. Yes. And one of my favorite takeaways from those sessions was in part 3, when we spoke to Arnaldo Zanato. And he said that he had learned aggressive hospitality, right? Which is becoming, approaching somebody, not waiting for them to approach you, but approaching somebody to make them smile. And I love that. And I think that, that really speaks to me and what the cruise lines and the cruise industry does. It's that aggressive hospitality when somebody walks on and you're spoken to and nobody's waiting for you to approach them. They're approaching you and they're trying to bring that joy to you. And that's what I love about the industry.
Agreed, completely. And on that, I can't wait to see you again in September and to see everyone. And thank you so much, Shannon, for talking with us today and giving us a little bit more insights into your life and what made
Thank you, Chiara.
you the
Thank
Shannon
you for
we
having
know.
me.
No, of course.
It was
Thank
great to catch
you.
up.
Yes, same. So thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.